Welcome to Arnie's Class Podcast. I'm Arnie Aniel. I'm an HR development consultant, an international public speaker, a workshop facilitator, a coach, and an educator. Life is a great opportunity, and we all learn life lessons every day. This podcast is all about those lessons. Lessons like gratitude, confidence, happiness, mindset, and a lot more. Learning without action is information. Learning with action is transformation. Join me, learn, and transform yourself into a better you. How do we develop people to become leaders? What skills, knowledge, or attitude that we require from people in order for them to become leaders? It is very important for a company to continually develop leaders. Most of the time, they call it succession planning or leadership pipeline. Why is it important? Because if you can develop more leaders, life becomes easier. And for a company to have more leaders, it means more goals to be achieved. So how can we develop more leaders? Particularly in this kind of situation that we are in at the moment. I believe that this kind of disruption is very important to be considered because all the organizations, I believe, were affected. And with the technology that keeps on changing, we have to be more creative, innovative in developing our people to become leaders. Life mates, let's all listen and learn together from my special guests as we discuss on how can we develop people to become leaders. Personally, I believe that the true measure of leadership is the ability of leaders to develop more leaders and not followers. My special guest for this episode has been an educator, lecturer, trainer, entrepreneur, and a performance coach in Asia since 2003. He is also an instructional designer and learning and development advisor. He has PhD in management science and 2 master degrees, one in education and one in business administration. He has diplomas and certifications in learning, development, and training. And I believe he is very much qualified to talk about people development and leadership. So please welcome my very special guest, Dr. Sanjib Charaborty. Dr. Sanjib, welcome to Arnie's class.
Thank you very much, Harney.
Yes, thank you so much. And doing this on a holiday, I really appreciate your time. So let's start. Dr. Sanjib, you've been in training, in education for a very, very long time. How do we develop people to become leaders?
Well, a very interesting question that most of the time that comes to me is that whether you develop leaders or they are born leaders. I mean, that's a dilemma. I mean, when I have to answer that question, I think it's a mix of both. They need to have some DNA when it comes to leadership, and definitely a lot of things can be coached. A lot of things can be developed over the years. A lot of experience that they go through that helps them to become one. But if you ask me a very simple question like how do you develop leaders, I think the first thing and the most important thing will be whether that person has that kind of interest, that kind of focus, that kind of intensity. Whether they want to really take up that kind of role when it comes to leadership. I also keep saying that if you want to be leader, are you okay to continue taking pressure? Because that's something that is a part of any leadership journey. So if a very simple question asks that, do you want to be leader, or what do you think will help you to become a leader? I would say a lot of tenacity, a lot of skill of managing people, a lot of emotional management skills, and understanding yourself. I think self management is something which will lead your way to become a leader. So, Ani, this is a very, very broad question, and I'll
I
just try to, you
know.
know, yeah.
Yeah, because they always think, nature or nurture. But personally, Dr. Sanjib,
Born leaders, or are they developed, or are they born, or it's a mix?
Yeah, I think I will always go with a mix. I'm sure I've actually had experience with a lot of leaders. In fact, my PhD research, the paper was on leadership. The paper was on finding, what are the attributes or what are the qualifications, characteristics that makes leaders. And I've been doing that. That research was based on the small and medium scale organizations, including education organizations. And when I was interviewing around 45 leaders at that point of time, around 7, 8 years back, I think one thing they all have said, that why they have become and what has actually helped them to become a leader. I think there's one important thing that everyone said, that they wanted to be. I think that's
Oh,
very
I
important.
see.
They wanted to be. So, as I said, that if you are not really interested to lead from the front, if you don't want to take those pressures on, if you really, I don't think it doesn't happen very naturally all the time. You must have that kind of preparedness, whether it is self-preparedness, whether it is, picking up organically how things are around you. Um, so I would go for a mix, because it can be coached, definitely. A lot of that can be coached. But at the same time, I think the will than the skill is also very important here.
See, you've mentioned about the attributes of leaders, or what are the attributes of leadership. Can you mention, aside from having that kind of intention to become a leader, what other attributes can you mention?
I think you can make out anyone, like even from your family. If you have a family picnic, you probably will find one person taking all the initiatives, and trying to kind of join everyone in, make sure that it happens perfectly, everything is in place. So you can pick up very early, at very early stage, you will understand people have those attributes, to kind of volunteer, to kind of go and do something more than someone else. I think that is something that needs to be picked up. That's number one. Number two is, as you grow, how what kind of maturity do you have, and how do you respond to people? How do you respond to problems? How do you respond to situations? I mean, that will be the next thing to look at. Whether you freak out, whether you know how to compose it, comprehend it, respond to it. Whether you also know whether you should be kind of quiet and talk about it. So I think those are natural attributes that you can, kind of keep a watch on. Um, and at the same time, if you look at developing attributes, I would say the things that people can develop over a period of time, which comes from experience. One of that will be patience. One of that will be your ability to take, defeat, your ability to understand, why things has not worked well, and how to have a plan B to make sure that it works next
Mm.
time. And how do you take people along with everything, or how do you connect people to work? I think that's very, very important, something that can be coached, that can be picked up. Whether you can really look at individuals, groups, and tasks together. That's the kind of quality, that's the kind of attribute that can be developed, that can be coached.
See. But have you experienced developing someone, and at the end you said, "Oh no, he's not a leader."
Yes, many times. My all kind of experience I had, like I've developed a person who never thought would be a leader, has become one. I have seen people who I thought can be a leader, given them the time, given them all
Mm.
the kind of inputs and coaching, and at the end of the day, they probably has turned out to be a better, than they used to be, in terms of people management, or in terms of responding to situations. But they have not become leaders from the front. I mean, they have still been pretty much at the back end, and pretty much connecting things but not leading things. So a lot of time we make this mistake. We feel a person who can actually take everyone together, ensure a mission has been established, and working in a team is actually a leader.
Mm.
Well, there is a fine line here. I would say yes, there are a lot of good managers who know how to manage situations and problems, and actually connect the dots and make things happen for you also. So I think leadership is not about just what you do. It's also about how do you see the potential in your people. I mean, when those people also see potential in others and see that how the others can grow, how the others can become a part of it. Now others learn in their process. I think they are leaders because it's just not like about yourself and your
Mm.
task and what you have done. It's also about how much time has did you take to make sure that the entire team works with you, performs with you, and grows with you, and all rather they become leaders. So another thing to keep in mind, very young age, when you see people, leading a situation, and even in school sports, we have seen that in our school days. There are a couple of people who actually take things from the front. They are also those who will come and also help you to become one. I think that's one attribute which comes very naturally. You probably can try to coach it, but I think I will go with the natural sting a lot more.
I see. But what did you do after, like, you developed, you coached everything, you did the training, and at the end, as I said, oh no, this person is not a leader. And then how did you handle that? How did you say or talk to that person that I'm sorry, but you're not a leader?
I think how do you know you're a leader? Until you have followers. I think the best
Yes.
point that I would tell them that, do you have followers? Do you have people waiting to hear from you? Do you have people who are? It's not about instruction. It's also
Mm.
about motivation. It's also about the aspiration. I mean, do you really have that, or are they inspired by you? I mean, if you think that that's not happening, if you think that you have been able to complete your task well, however, you are not an inspirational person people are looking forward to. When you already get that vibes and you already understand that you are not that one, but that doesn't mean that you are worthless. I mean, you
Yeah.
definitely are, can contribute. You definitely can take things further, but and probably you are not the one who will you know become that spotlight that we are looking at. And I think it need not be so upfront with that person to say that you are not a leader. I mean, that person has already figured it out. I mean, how much that person can actually go, how much that person can actually give. And eventually, I mean, the vibes, the responses, the way people interact and get or not get inspired gives that idea that whether he is or she is a leader or not. I would say that not everyone need to be leader also, because we do need leaders, but we
Mm.
also
Yeah.
need non-leaders. Yeah, so I would say that, yeah, this is you and it's fine, and that there's absolutely no problem in being what you are. You still can do great jobs. You can still assist people and help people to achieve their goals. So there is no problem. I mean, it's no, it is a lot of pressure on a person. Why that they have to become a leader, they have to achieve that
Yeah.
position, and I don't think it's actually required. I think it can be just like so to answer your question, if I find someone who is not getting there, I mean, over a period of time, even you tried that, I think you continue assisting that person and let that person achieve what that person can. And probably that person is quite good. I mean, it's just like he or she don't have that final instinct to get there.
Yeah. Oh, I always hear this, especially to those who are already old and experienced leaders, that people skills are very important for you to become a leader. Without people skills, you're not going to be successful. So what's your take on that? Because there are some people who are on a managerial position. Nowadays, I've heard in organizations wherein they don't give them the subordinates or the team members because they said they can excel, but they cannot just work with people. So what is your take on that?
Yeah, I think leadership is people skill. It's everything is people skill here. And when it comes to people skill, if I have to define what exactly it is, and it's a question, many people have asked me that what do you mean by people skill? Is it being with people, or is it being able to work with people, or ability to understand them or understand their emotions? I would say it's everything. It's a package basically. But one of the most important thing is that how do you respond to a person when that person is sitting in front of you? I think the
Mm.
leadership moment, leadership 101 moment, I would say, is how do you behave with the person sitting across you? And are you making that person strong? Are you making that person capable? Are you making that person confident? I mean, that at that point, at that situation, are you making that person important? So when it comes to people skill, and every time a leader should see the person sitting opposite to that person, wearing a T-shirt written like "Make me feel important." I mean, that's the only solution I would have for any leader,
Mm.
is that if you think that the person sitting in front of you is the most important person at that point, and then what you have to do when it comes to people skill. So yes, to answer your question, that um, people skill very important. A lot of time we don't know what exactly people skill means, and I think I boil it down to this much: people skill means making the person sitting in front of you the most important.
Yeah, very well said. I think that is something that a lot of people, I think, don't really understand what people's skills are, because I also encountered some people. So what do you mean by that? And I always explain to them that how you relate with people, that's very important. So what do you say about those people who are on a leadership position, let's say, or sorry, if I say managerial position, but no team members, because the organization said you cannot work with people, because there are some people who are really, really good in giving the results for the organization, but very bad in terms of people.
Yeah, I think I have come across that kind of person in my career. People who are great in their job, understands everything quite well, does perfectly, everything. But when it comes to working in a team, when it comes to getting established something with people, they have not done so great. I understand, and this can happen. But when I talk about leadership, I not only talk leadership about leading a team or
Mm.
leading an organization. I also think there is something called self leadership. So leadership also means that how do you interact in a situation, and that interaction not always necessary with people. It can be necessary with, it can be with the environment, with the task, with the job that you have in hand. So I'll give a very small example. And I was just about to travel a month back, and I went to a shopping mall. I just realized that my suitcase, the handle of my suitcase, is not fine. I mean, it's broke. So I don't know at this point, what can I do? I just wanted to fix it. I went to the mall, and I just found there is a place where they fix stuff. They actually do fix shoes and keys. I mean, they don't never fix a suitcase. So I went there, and I was actually trying to request that person that, listen, this is my situation, and need to get this fixed. Can you help me? Now, whatever that person did at that point, okay, he said, this is something that we have never done. Okay,
Okay.
but he said, I'll do this for you. Okay, I'll try what I can do. Okay, and he said that, do you have half an hour with you? Can you come back? And I said, okay, are you sure that you are not going to waste my half an hour? And he said that, you have my words, I'll give my best shot. So I was just like kind of strolling around for 30 to 35 minutes, come back, and it's been fixed. And I just asked that, and I also kind of seen what that person was doing. He immediately got busy in calls and started calling few places here and there. And I was thinking that probably he's doing something related to my suitcase, and I was happy about that. When I'm back, I found it fixed, and I was really I don't know how to thank him. And and I've seen leadership there, Ani,
Yeah,
because this
I
is where the
agree.
person takes that initiative to help, calls here and there, finds the stuff to join, and make sure that it's done. So that's also leadership. So I would my response to your question, or to everyone who is actually great in their job, I mean, you can find leadership in every piece of task that you have. Not necessary you're doing it together, but probably you're bringing things together very subtly and making it happen. So I think that's great leadership also.
Yeah, yeah, very good example. I remember that as one of the definitions that I can always recall is that leadership is not about the position, but it's about the action. What actions do you actually take? Yeah, very, very good example. But it happens in Bangkok, right?
Yes, yes, that's
Okay,
right.
I see. N- Now, at present time, more and more female leaders are emerging and very successful. How do you compare or contrast female leadership to male leadership? Because I always hear this: female leaders or male leaders are better than females, so that's why less female leaders. So, what's your personal take on that?
Yeah, it's a very sensitive question. I have to be politically right to answer this, Anil.
I
And
know, I know. I'm putting you on the spot.
yeah, I should not land up in trouble. So, the organization that I work with, we have 95% women working, because I run a teacher training organization where most of them are women. All kind of positions are actually held by them, whether it's assistant managers to the executive director, everyone, they are women leaders. Um, like if you ask me to contrast, and I would say there's only one thing that I would say that this is something that they need to fix it,
Yeah.
or that's a problem. I would say this is one difference that I would try to bring up is the emotional management skills. I think that's the only place where I think when it comes to a woman leader, I've seen many of them, and this is one place where they either get carried away too much, and when they have understood that they have carried away too much, they become too stern. So this kind of striking that middle path becomes a little difficult. So when they realize that they're getting carried away, they become too stern, too rigid, and if not, they get too much carried away with emotions. And I would rather say woman to woman management is a issue here. A woman leader managing men has been great, and I have seen that they've
Oh,
done it perfectly and done quite well. In last 15 years in my organization, I've seen that working really great. But when it comes to woman management, as a leadership role, I think that's where it's kind of emotion clash, kind of, I would say, and spoils a lot of opportunities for both of them actually. So that's one contrast I would say. I mean, I won't say it's negative. That's how it is. That's
yeah.
how it's been made. But every other thing in terms of thinking skill, critical thinking skill, in terms of understanding. And while I say emotion is a problem, I would also give 10 out of 10 when it comes to people understanding skills. So I would say understanding skill, critical thinking skills, decision making, and also the ability to go out of the box, the creativity. I would give women more points than men. As per my experience, it's my point of view. There will be many who is not actually accepting this. So
Yes.
from my experience, I would rather have a woman boss, a woman leader,
Oh,
and because
interesting.
because yeah, I think I have even in my interviews when I actually had that during my research, and I had around 11 women leaders who were there, and I was actually asking a lot of questions, which was a part of my research. And I think they all have responded so well when it comes to clarity of thoughts. And I'm really really happy. I mean, that's how it should be, and that's how they are. And as you said, it's emerging, and I mean, it should have actually emerged 100 years back. I think there was a dominance, that really got them stuck where they are stuck, or there where they were stuck. I'm pretty happy, place like Thailand, and you see a lot of women leaders,
Yes.
and I'm really happy to see that. But if you go to other parts of Asia, when you move to India, or you move to any other subcontinent, this is not the situation basically. Even if you look at Japan, or
Yeah.
Taiwan, or China for that sake. But I think they would emerge. I mean, at one point you won't be able to control that, because they do good job. They are good leaders. They're It's only just one bit. Probably my experience is the emotional management. I think things are changing. People are learning. The environment is different. The culture is different. The new generation is different. So I would say they would become better leaders than men anytime.
Yes. But it's a very good observation when you mentioned that a female leader leading men against a female leader leading a group of females. That's a very interesting point. I never heard about it. And I think that's a very interesting point. You mentioned about the new generation. Actually, that's my next question. What do you think should be the leaders do with the new generation? Because it's totally different. A lot of people are telling me that, honey, this generation are totally different. I have observed that too, that a lot of them, they think of themselves that we know a lot. We
Yeah.
know a lot, we know it, and most of them are doing startup businesses. So what can you say about this generation? What kind of leaders can handle this generation?
I think whoever is the leader. I mean, if they're actually leading the 21st century situation where they have two or three generation gaps, a leader who is probably in two or three generations away from this, new generations. What they have to understand that we are dealing with, people who have knowledge, learned everything much faster than the way we had learned it. They are digital natives.
Mm.
They have more information around. They are quick searchers. They are researchers. They have a very clear research mind. They don't take things on face value. They want to make sure what you say is what you mean. So the two things here, Ani, I would say one is accepting the way it is because that's how it is. I mean, you can't change the entire generation. I mean, that's how they have been brought up. And you probably the father, of one of the kid. I mean, who is actually in that front end going for startups, and you have to actually manage that kind of people. So I think getting them on the task becomes very important. Do they really understand, why they are with you and why they have joined? What is basically the mission that you have? And you have to let that happen because with the pandemic, all that we have learned is how to manage adversity. I think this new generation will be a kind of that generation who will be actually handling adversity along the way. I mean, they don't know what is coming tomorrow. They don't know,
Yeah.
what is going to happen. So I keep saying that the changes that we have observed, that we have witnessed in last 10 years has actually not happened past 100 years. So basically, think about those kids who are actually going for startups. Out of their 25 years, 10 or 15 years, they have seen huge things happening around them. So they have picked up a lot more things. We have picked up things 30 years. They have picked up things in 10 years or 15 years. So half the time they have picked up things. So address it accordingly. I mean, it's
Mm.
how that's how it should be. Let them do it. Let them manage it. Even in our organizations, we have leaders emerging who are at their mid 20s.
Yeah.
And and there is a problem in a situation where we have other leaders who are at their mid to end 40s. So how do you balance it? And I think in an organizational setup, it's important that both kind of leaders exist. Both kind of leaders are given the opportunity because we need to know how they deal with it, and they need to know how these people deal with it. So it's a good mix to have both. So just to respond to your question, like, what do you think, how to handle these people? I think just let them do the way they want to. I mean, we also need to change, we also need to learn, we also need to
Mm.
accept the fact that they know more and they learn more in lesser time. So probably they'll do a few things better. At the same time, I mean, there is definitely a place of wisdom. There is always a place of experience. So, wherever you think that they need you in terms of, giving the inputs, we should always go and, give them. But, these people don't like to take instructions.
Yes.
So,
I agree to that.
give them advices and tell them that this is something that you think can help, and see how they want to take it, how they want to comprehend it, how they want to interact and kind of take care of that.
Yeah. Dr. Sanjeev, in your experience and perspective, which one do you think will be more challenging? A young leader leading this older generation, or the opposite, an older generation leader handling and leading these millennials or these digital natives, because I'm a digital immigrant. So which one do you think will be more challenging?
I think both is challenging. I think most of the organizations today probably is facing this, and
Mm.
and this will be there for another kind of 2 decades, and after that they actually take over. So I think it's difficult for the older generation to handle the younger, people in the organization, the way they think, the way they interact, the way they manage. But since I would say they have the wisdom and the experience, they probably have learned their way. and the younger generation handling the older leaders probably is little less difficult. Why would I say that? Because probably they're handling a matured group of people. They understand what is more important at that point. So if I am being led in my organization by a younger chap who is basically at late 20s, for example, it will be easier for him to handle me than me handle him. The reason being, I'll be more responsive and understanding because I know that I have to get that person take over from here. So probably I would say that okay, my tenure will be another decade. So why don't I kind of settle down in what I do best and let that person take over, because that person has to do that for another 20, 25, or 30 years. So if that kind of maturity and wisdom I already have, I will let that happen. So it will be easier for those generations to handle us,
Yeah.
compared to us
Handling
managing
them.
them. Yeah.
Yes. You mentioned pandemic earlier. And of course, this is an unprecedented situation that happened to us. Who would have thought that it's going to happen? My question is, what do you think should leaders change after the pandemic? Or I don't want to say maybe not change, what they should learn from this experience in order for them to become more effective leaders.
Yeah, I think 30 years back we were talking about to have a great IQ, okay, the intelligence quotient. And 10 years back, we were talking about having a great EQ, and the emotional quotient. And I think this is the time to have a great AQ, which is adversity quotient,
Mm.
because that is basically it's going to remain now. So we have to take as things come. I think this is the best learning that we could ever have. So a lot of things happened during this pandemic which we have never thought and never learned. So we take that as a learning experience, and actually we mature with this. So I think the way we have handled things, the forecasting that we always did in our career was based on the calculations on what we can do and what the market can do. But here is it, which is beyond you and the market.
Yeah.
It's basically how the environment is going to change. In fact, with the climate change coming up, with a lot of talk on that. So I think this generation and generations coming need to be a lot of flexible in terms of adversity. They need to adapt change quickly, make
Mm.
sure they respond to change super fast, and they don't stick to things. Because sticking to things doesn't work. We have seen that during the pandemic. And I'm happy that in one way this happened. I mean, not only me, I'm sure people like you and everyone else have actually changed our ways. In fact, Ani, this session we would have done in your office
That's
if we
right.
had no pandemic.
Yes.
So
Yes.
so I think adversity and adapting change and being very, very flexible is something that we have all learned to be. And apart from being very calculative in terms of forecasting, in terms of thinking what is coming, we also started reading more, learning more, and knowing more. I think just because we want to know what can happen, because this one direction that we were not going to, we were only being busy with our own self, with our own work, with our own organization. It's now something that what climate is. I think people will become more climate conscious, health conscious. They'll nurture it accordingly, and I would say a heads up to that.
Nice. Very well said. And with your experience, especially, I'm sure you have developed different kinds of leaders or different kinds of people. How will you measure the success of a leader?
Well, I think leadership is a journey, and I won't say that it is something that you have to measure at one point. Yes, there will be some stops and stations
Yeah.
where you can kind of run some stick of measurement and see how they have done and how they have actually achieved over a period of time. I think it's a contact sports. That's how I want to put leadership is. So how much have you been in contact with your people in your journey defines how successful you have been as a leader. So if you have to measure leadership here, it's not about how great the business worked for you or how great the people have learn from you. It's also about, how great the people think about you. I think, are they inspired? So I would give leadership the tag called inspirational leadership, because we have been learning during our time about the autocratic,
Yeah.
bureaucratic, democratic leaderships. And I think it's a time of inspirational leadership now. So are your people inspired? Do they learn? And if a person has to ask this question to themselves, that why would I want to be led by you? I mean, if that is the question, and if that has been answered, I mean, that's the leadership measure stick, I would say. So do I want to be led by you? I mean, if that measurement is high, I mean, you have been successful in your journey. So that would be the measurement.
Wow. My question is, but what kind of leader are you, Dr. Sanjib? How would you describe yourself as a leader?
um, I would say I've been a transformational leader, because I have three generations and I have 30 years of work experience now. So I have 3 decades handling people with 3 different kind of, I when I started my career, we were the first people to work on DOS and computers, those big boxes. And there's a time when we are actually in a touch screen and in artificial intelligence. So the transformation that we have seen over 30 years is phenomenal. So all kind of people that has come our way are different, and every decade has been different set of people. In fact, even when I recruit people, and very recently we recruited people, um, a girl at 23, and I'm super happy that, okay, I'll be handling a girl at 23 now. So and the person I was at 23 when I started my career, and now I'm going to handle a person at 23 when I'm 50. So it's kind of a transformation. It's kind of a journey. It's kind of changing everything around me, because the way we worked, that we used to work, and the way we work now, see change, from manual to digital, from Excels to ERP. So it's kind of
Yeah.
a huge transformation. So I think I have been a transformation leader. I have adapted as things has come. I've been open to accept, the way it is, open to look at changes. I would say there's one thing that has worked with me, that I have been, my foresightness has been very strong, and I could see things coming. I could see things that this would happen and that would happen. I would say 8 out of 10 time it is the way I thought, or it actually uh, came out that way, the way I thought it would be. So I've been lucky in that way. So I think that's what worked with me, and my hunch did work with me. My luck did work with me, and I think without those, also, sometimes you fail, and even if you're great leaders. So that's how I have been.
Ah, very nice. And I'm sure you've met different kinds of leaders in your career. I know I myself, I believe that leadership is a journey. It's because, I've seen and I've heard about workshops that you can attend to become leaders, but I don't really believe that you can just attend one workshop and you become a leader after 1 day or 2 days or even 1 week. I also believe that it's a journey. If you're going to design with your experience and qualifications, Dr. Sanjib, just at least give us like 3 things that you think is necessary for people to become leaders. If you're going to develop like this group of young people and you're going to design a development program for them, at least 3 or 5 things that you think these are the things that you have to learn. Without this, I don't think you will become effective leaders.
I think the first is self leadership. The disciplines that you build up yourself. When I said you this, that why would I be want to be led by you? I mean, this is a question that every leader has to ask themselves. That why would someone follow me? So if you have that idea in mind, that okay, if I want to follow someone, that someone needs to have A, B, C, D, E. I mean, it's the same thing for you. That if you don't have that, means people will not follow you. So self leadership and discipline, I would say, number one. And how you want people to look at you, how you want people to be addressing you. I mean, if you want to earn that, you have to become that first. So that's how the self leadership comes in. Number two is A lot of people don't understand that leadership is not about leading situations and problems and leading people. It's also about leading emotions. So it's very important that you understand that the person you talk to, make that person the most important person in front of you. I said that before, I repeat
Yeah.
now. So that would be number two. Number three is that, being a leader, you are like a goldfish in the tank, everyone watching you, everyone trying to see how you make your moves, how you decide, how you eat, how you behave to certain group of people. So, you are basically on the spotlight. So from here, you can be conscious and deliberate, or you can go with the flow, or you can become super hyped and lose everything that you have. So being a goldfish means a lot of responsibility. It's not about just the spotlight. It's about understanding that if people will follow me, okay, so I should make sure that I make my moves right. So all your actions needs to be conscious and deliberate. That means it is subtle in a way that people understand that you did it subtly, but it has to be properly thought. It needs to be properly comprehended before you act. Okay, even the small decisions that you give, that can create a lot of impact with people. So uh, small or big, decision is decision. So make sure that you are subtle, deliberate, and conscious. So that will be my third suggestion. The fourth suggestion is, people like to learn and love to know more these days. So as a leader, if you're not reading, if you're not learning, if you're not upgrading, if you're not continuously bringing up yourself, I would say, people will not follow you. Okay, so you have to be a learner reader, I would say. So you have to unlearn a lot of things, relearn a lot of things, and the continuous journey of learning. So reading a lot of books, um, hearing a lot of podcasts, including Arnie's podcast,
Thank you.
making sure that you get hooked up with YouTube's, get hooked up with sessions from other leaders, what they have done, what they have said, the way it has been done by others. So I think keeping yourself continuously upgrading will be the fourth thing that you need to keep in mind. The fifth will be, responsive. When I say responsive, doesn't mean always positively responding. I would always say that, don't ignore, don't bypass. Okay, every small person in the organization you work with impacts your organization. So as a leader, it becomes very important that that small person is also important to you. Maybe they don't contribute directly to your revenue or the growth, but indirectly they have a hand on that. So responding to people, making sure that everyone is important, making sure that everyone is given that due respect, is 101 leadership, because that's where you have followers. It's where people start liking you, loving you, and you would agree, you cannot be a leader if you're not liked and loved, right? So
Yes.
you have to get to that spot. Again, a lot of deliberate action will be required to reach there. And number six, I mean, that will be my last point, my favorite point, and I would say that, do you do self talk? Okay, as a leader, I think it's very important that you talk to yourself, spend a lot of time evaluating, engaging yourself, and see that what have you got, what have you brought up, how much did you do, how much did you take, how much did you, respond, and how much did you grow. So a continuous, self-reflection, self-talk is very important for leadership, because then you know that you are on track, you are doing your checklist, you're ticking all the boxes in the right time. So those will
Wow.
be my advices.
Very nice. That's very well said. In like you were able to design a program now for leadership development in less than 1 minute. And I totally agree. I think self-awareness is very important because that's where we start. If you're totally aware of who you are, and what you can become, can really lead you to that path of leadership and success, if I may say, and of course, happiness. And you reminded me, Dr. Sanjeev, of leaders are readers.
Yes.
If you really want to be a leader, you have to read and read and read, and of course, you have to continually develop yourself. You don't stop. You're a lifelong learner if you're a leader. almost towards the end of our podcast. One question before I ask you my standard questions. What do you think will be the future of leaders or leadership, especially in Asian context?
Come again, I didn't hear that clearly.
Yeah. What do you think will be the future of leadership?
Well, I think leadership will transform. The way things are today, it will transform because businesses are becoming different now. The way it is, it's becoming more piecemeal. It's becoming more upfront. It's becoming a smaller version of a larger, thing now. So I think there will be small teams functioning. Very slowly. I think those concepts of like one leader 2,000 people, one leader 5,000 people is going to vanish. It's going to be team leaders, small managing small team, managing small projects, managing small business. I think that's what's going to emerge in Asia, because it's a place where things are going to grow in terms of economy, in terms of business, in terms of people scale, in terms of number of enterprises. So we will continue to need leaders managing small group of people. So there will be a transformation, and there will be a need of a lot more leaders than what it is right now. So anyone who is basically a little more than executive in their role today are future leaders. They become managers, assistant managers, and then finally become leaders in organizations. They probably go for their own startups. They probably go for their own small businesses. So SMEs are going to emerge, I mean, in next 20, 25 years. So I think that's immense, future for leaders, because every spot that we look for will be a person who is leading this small businesses, small or medium businesses. So yes, huge scope for leadership. Huge scope for leadership.
And I really hope that there will be more and more leaders, especially in Asia, who will be globally recognized leaders. Thank you so much for sharing that. Dr. Sanjib, my standard questions for my guests after everything you've shared about leadership and people development. It's either you can answer on a general basis or in a leadership context. So what do you think is the greatest lesson you've learned in life?
I think choosing the right person to be your coach is the greatest thing that I've learned, because if you have the right person helping you out beside you, telling you what to do and what not to do, and being able to choose the right person, who you take from, is very important. And I know these days you really don't get coaches, because it's difficult to get coaches these days. So our coach are the books that we read,
Yeah.
the materials that we refer, and the time we spend. So I think my great lesson has been that um, whether I've been able to really pick up those and translate those into my actions. If I have done that well, I think that has really worked so good for me. So that is one lesson, picking up the right person. Another lesson, I would say that um, making sure that you react always on time. The reaction time of leaders are basically, if it is late, if it is delayed, okay, if it is postponed or procrastinated, whatever you call it, it's dangerous. So my lessons, one of the lessons would be that every time I've seen that I've not been able to respond on time, things have actually gone really heavy. Things have actually gone really, bad and worse. So that's a lesson I learned, that respond, um, you know, make sure that you're responding the right time.
Yes. When you mentioned about coaches or coach, to find yourself a coach, you reminded me as well that, sometimes the people you are with most of the time are actually your coaches. So be
Yes,
selective of who you spend time with. Because they said that
yes,
you become the average of the 5 people you're always with.
right, right. Yeah.
Yes. The next question is, what decision you've made in the past and still has an impact of who you are now?
I think one of that would be, the way I have interacted with my people and my decision about people. That, did I segregate people based on their characters, attributes, experience, and responses. I think I've never done that. Okay. So every time when anyone has come to me, when we have worked together over a period of time, for me, all those people, they have been my colleague. I have never considered that I'm running the show and I'm trying to lead them. I always thought that we're doing it together. So my decision about people, my decision about considering them to be working together, considering them to be a part of my success, organization success, or success of the project that we take up. So I think that is one decision that really helped me every single time, that never categorize your people. Your people are your people. They are beside you if you are with them. So I think that's the decision. I still have people who are working with me 15 years, 10 years, 12
Wow.
years. And I think the reason that they have stick back, and probably they will have a better way to explain this, but I think it's the reason is that I have been their people all the time, and now they want to be my people all the time, and that's how it is. So that was the decision. I think it really helped me to become what I am today.
Yes, it's good to have those kind of people working for you for more than 10 years. Wow. They work with you, not they work for you. I think that's a very important part of working together, that you work with me, not for me, because I think it changes a lot. Yes,
Yes.
the situation there. And my last question, with your 30 years of experience and of course with all your qualifications I've mentioned earlier during the introduction, if you or someone else, probably you're also thinking of writing a book. If you or someone else will write your life, what kind of book will it be, and what will be the title?
Okay. I published a book. It's
Oh,
called, yeah, it's called Hate Your Status Quo. It's been published in 2017, and it's exactly what you said. I mentioned that in that book. So when I said hate your status quo, means ever transforming situation, that you don't be in one status quo all the time. You adapt to things, change as it comes. Make sure you're flexible and fluid all the time. I mean, it's only the pandemic was not there, so I would have actually had a chapter on what you learned on pandemic or during the pandemic. So I think the book would be, if I have to rewrite that book again today, I would say that um, there's one thing that people should write about, that is that you are not static. I mean, human are not static. Okay. And you continuously transform, you continuously learn new things, new skills, new knowledge. Your attitude changes, your behavior changes, the people beside you changes, the environment, organization, project. I mean, everything around you is changing almost every single moment. In fact, the time we are talking, there is something that is changing, and probably we will only respond to that when we get to know that. So don't maintain your status quo. Don't maintain the way you are all the time. Don't maintain what you are all the time. Okay, because we have to understand, and we agreed to that point, that there will be adversity, there will be problems, there will be changes, there will be situations, that will continue coming, and we have to change and accept it as it comes. So the title of the book was Hate Your Status Quo. I mean, just because you should hate the way you are all the time. And if you are self-talking and self-reflecting, my last point of leadership, uh, if you are changing and if you are accepting to change all the time, I think, and it's a lovely journey, I would say. I mean, that's what you should be looking forward to. I mean, why would you have to be one, all the time? It's one life, and do various things. I mean, I really don't want to say that. There are people who want to do one thing in one life, and there are kind of people who want to do many things in one life. So continue changing, continue adapting, continue to be a fluid person all the time. So that is how I would describe me, that transform and continue transforming.
transform, evolve, and develop yourself nonstop.
Yes.
Thank you so much. And I'm sure the listeners will learn a lot from this episode. And thank you so much for sharing your perspectives, your thoughts, your experiences on leadership and people development. And if you're going to write, I know you already published now, I know you publish a book. You said if you're going to rewrite that, what if you're going to write a new book, Dr. Sanjib? Do you have another idea for that book?
Yeah, I'm actually, planning to write a book. Basically, I've got some ideas. I'm trying to look at measuring training, which is nothing to do about leadership. It's more about,
Ah,
we do a lot of training development for people right now. And I think you also asked me this question: how do you measure leadership? So I would say, how do you measure, people learning? I think something that is becoming very important these days. That for any professionals like us, we do a lot of sessions all our life. A lot of people are, listening to us, and how do we know that they have learned it? How do we know if they have learned it and applied it in their place? And how do we know if that application has impacted them? So there are three things. One is learning, one is applying it, and then is finally whether that is impacting. And how do you measure all these three things: the learning measurement, the application measurement, and the impact measurement? So I'm trying to write a book on that, on how do you measure your learning, application, and impact.
wow. Good luck. I'm sure you can write that book in the very near future. Dr. Sanjib, if someone wants to contact you, reach out to you, or probably attend your trainings, please, where can they contact you?
I think I already have a website called sanjibchakraborty.com. That's the easiest place to contact. Otherwise, I'm available in my email and Facebook page. Same, Dr. Sanjib Neil Chakraborty as the Facebook page. They can contact me through my Facebook page also.
Once again, thank you so much, especially for sharing your precious time with me and with my listeners. Life mates, once again, this is the episode about leadership and people development. If you like this episode, please share, not only with your friends, not only with your family, but with all the people in your network, because every day is a learning experience for us, and you better share that with the people around you. Listen and learn.